Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this. It's February 2004, Craiova, Romania. A man, Tom Petra, he dies. His family digs him up,
Right.
and his brother takes a pitchfork, pulls out his heart, and burns it
Wow.
because they genuinely believed he'd, you know, reanimated to feed on them. His relative, Elizabeth Marinescu, she actually said, I saw him coming at night. He was calling. I was screaming. He was sucking our blood.
That is, I mean, that's incredibly chilling, especially for something so recent, so visceral. You might be listening and thinking, okay, that sounds like a horror movie plot.
Exactly.
But what's so striking is how real that fear was and how it immediately throws us into this topic, often just dismissed as like Hollywood fiction,
Yeah.
vampires.
Precisely. And we are definitely not talking about the sparkly kind today. This deep dive, we're really going to explore these alleged real-world encounters, the origins, and they're much darker, much more widespread than I think most people realize. So our mission here is basically to take this whole stack of sources. We've got historical accounts, ancient texts, even modern claims, investigations, and just pull out the key bits of info, the important insights about vampires.
Kind of a shortcut for you, the listener.
Yeah, exactly. A shortcut to getting well informed, maybe uncovering some surprising stuff, and seeing how these old tales might actually, connect to things happening today.
Okay, so let's open up this rabbit hole straight away. There was another incident, much closer to home, actually, Florida.
Yeah.
Two middle school girls,
Oh, yeah.
just 11 and 12 years old. They were arrested. Why? They were planning to kill fellow students,
Wait, 11 and 12.
11 and 12. And their goal was gruesome. They wanted to drink their blood from goblets. And the affidavit actually said they wanted to ensure that after they killed themselves, they'd go to hell to be with Satan.
That's profoundly disturbing. And it really highlights, doesn't it, how these dark beliefs can manifest in such a tangible, modern way.
It does. And our sources, they make a direct link between these kinds of, well, vampiric acts and Satanism.
Right. And maybe we should clarify what Satanism means in this context. The sources define it as purposely going against the divine in a covenant with evil spirits.
With the intention of drawing the opposite power from such actions to personally gain and cause chaos.
Yeah.
It's about inversion, about gaining power from forbidden acts.
Which brings us really to the historical and sort of spiritual side of this. What does Scripture, like the Bible, actually say about consuming blood?
Well, it's very clear. It says blood is the life of the flesh, and drinking it, strictly forbidden. Leviticus 17, verses 10 to 12, it's quite explicit. And any man from the house of Israel, or from the immigrants, who eats any blood, I will set my faith against that person, and will cut him off from among his people.
For the life of the flesh is in the blood. Yeah.
Exactly. That core idea. Life is the blood.
And it's not just there. You see it reinforced in other places, too. Leviticus 19.26 warns, you shall not eat anything with the blood, nor practice divination or soothsay. Mm-hmm.
And even way later in the New Testament, Acts 15.29, it advises believers to abstain from things sacrificed to idols and from blood.
So this wasn't just like a dietary rule. It was deeply symbolic. Consuming blood was seen as a fundamental violation, an act against the divine, against the natural order itself.
Right. Now, when people think vampires, they almost always jump to one name.
Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah. But it's kind of a myth, isn't it, that he's the origin?
It really is a common misconception. Our sources hammer this home. Vampire legends, or things very much like them, they pop up in almost every culture all over the globe.
It's actually amazing when you look into it. You've got the European ones, sure, like revenants or maybe Droll, but then China has the Kangxi.
Right.
Australia's got the Rahu. And India, wow, India has a whole list. Buddha, Asrapa, Brahma-Purusha, Rakshasa, just so many different names there.
That variety in India does suggest something, perhaps a really deep, ancient root for these kinds of beliefs there. Matthew Bunson, who wrote the Vampire Encyclopedia, he actually points to the Indus Valley, the ancient civilization.
Yeah, 3rd millennium BC. He suggests that's the most likely candidate for the birthplace of vampire. He talks about evidence of the earliest vampire cults there.
Cults, like worshiping them.
Sort of. Worship or veneration of these vampire gods or powerful beings who needed to be, placated with sacrifices, offerings of blood.
So, okay, it starts there, maybe, in the Indus Valley. How does it get everywhere else?
Well, the encyclopedia suggests things like trade, cultural and religious diffusion, or even wars carried India tales to other lands, eventually reaching Europe.
And a big part of that spread apparently involved the Romani people, the gypsies.
That's right. They originated in India and traveled widely and brought their own stories with them. And interestingly, they'd already arrived in Romania by 1431.
Which is the year Vlad the Impaler was born, so the stories were already there.
Exactly. The groundwork was laid long before Vlad. Which brings us to maybe the most notable, historically documented case,
Yeah.
Arnold Pale.
Okay, this one is really something. It happened around, what, 1727, 1728, and then again later.
Yeah, there was a second outbreak in 1732. This is in a Serbian village, Medvedja, near Belgrade.
And Pale, he was a Hajduk, right? Like a soldier, or maybe more like a militiaman.
Something like that, yeah, an irregular soldier. He claimed that while he was serving down in Greece, he'd been, well, afflicted by a vampire.
Afflicted, like bitten.
The account says afflicted. He claimed he destroyed the creature, but felt forever after cursed. Anyway, he comes back home, settles down, and then dies pretty suddenly. Fell off a hay wagon, broke his neck.
Okay, an accident. But then...
But then things start happening. Stories spread.
Yeah.
People are seeing Pale, wandering around the village.
After he's dead and buried.
Yep. And then 4 people report being attacked by him. Lots of livestock found dead, defiled. And the really chilling part, those 4 people who were attacked, they died 3 days after the attacks.
3 days. That number again.
Keep that number in mind. So the villagers are, understandably, terrified. They wait 40 days after his death, then they dig him up.
And what they supposedly found is just, it's classic vampire lore, but documented.
It really is. They reported his body was undayed, completely preserved, fresh blood coming out of his nose, mouth, ears, and even eyes. And they claimed he had new nails and skin where the old ones had fallen off. So they do the traditional thing, drive a stake through his heart.
And supposedly...
He let out an audible groan.
Can you even imagine? The terror in that village must have been immense.
Absolutely. And it didn't end there. 5 years later, boom, another epidemic hits the same village. 17 people die within 3 months, all supposedly from vampire attacks.
17 people? That's huge for a village back then.
It was serious enough that the Emperor of Austria gets involved. He sends a regimental field surgeon, Johannes Fleckinger, to investigate properly. And this guy, Fleckinger, he wasn't just some local official. He was a medical professional, experienced with cadavers.
Okay, so more objective observer, maybe. What did he find?
Well, he and his team exhumed several bodies, people who had died in the second wave, maybe 2 or 3 months after their deaths. And his official report describes similar things.
Like...
Yeah. Undeyed bodies with newly growing skin and nails. Undeyed organs with fresh blood everywhere. At the end, Fleckinger noted that these people also died within that same 3 days pattern after they were allegedly attacked.
Wow. Okay, so what's the counter-argument here? Because that sounds pretty damning.
Well, the main argument, and it's a fair one, is lack of understanding about decomposition back then. Things like bloating, skin slippage, post-mortem purging of fluids could look like signs of life or undeath to people unfamiliar with the process. Maybe tuberculosis was rampant, causing the wasting and pallor.
Right, that makes sense. Natural process is misinterpreted through fear.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Fleckinger's report has this one really strange detail that's harder to explain away just by decay. He describes one body, a woman buried with her baby. The grave had apparently been disturbed by dogs, and the baby's body was partially eaten.
Okay.
Yet Fleckinger specifically notes the mother's corpse looked entirely like it had been fresh and feeding on living things. That contrast between the decaying baby and this seemingly fresh mother, it complicates the simple decomposition explanation.
Yeah, that is weird. It doesn't quite fit the standard decay narrative, does it?
It certainly adds a layer of strangeness. Now, moving from history to the present day, you might be surprised that there are actually modern vampire communities.
Like actual groups of people.
Yeah. Sources mention them in places like New Orleans, often tied into the voodoo culture there, and also Chicago, apparently.
Huh. But beyond communities, are there, like, individual accounts, people claiming to be vampires today?
There are. And perhaps the most fascinating and definitely controversial case is this guy, an ex-vampire named Bill Schnoebelen.
Ex-vampire. Okay, that sounds out there.
It does, and you have to take personal testimonies like this carefully, right? There might be exaggeration. But what's interesting is how parts of his story, certain details about esoteric practices, they actually line up surprisingly well with what other researchers have found.
Okay, so what's his story? How did he supposedly become a vampire?
Well, he claims he started as a Catholic minister, but then got really deep into Wicca, witchcraft, and eventually Satanism. He says he reached the 7th degree in his particular cult.
7th degree, like levels.
Apparently. And at that point, he was given a choice: become a vampire, which meant drinking blood, or become a werewolf, which involved eating flesh.
He chose
He
vampire.
chose vampire.
Mhm.
And the process he described for transformation, it's pretty wild. It involved eating specific herbs, vitamins, and apparently a very large quantity of cocaine.
Okay, and how does that fit in?
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
He said first he became a psychic vampire, drawing energy, life force from people, not blood initially. He claimed he felt physical changes, even said his blood type permanently changed.
Mhm.
Then came the blood ritual.
Right.
One night, after taking, again, a ridiculous amount of cocaine, his satanic master, as he called him, cut his own chest and made Bill drink his blood.
Okay, and the cocaine's role.
According to Schnoebelen, the cocaine altered his saliva. It supposedly became this thick substance still containing cocaine that acted like a topical anesthetic. So when he would bite someone later,
They would numb the skin so they wouldn't feel it as much.
that was his claim, yeah. A natural anesthetic delivered via the bite.
Wow. Okay, so then what? He starts drinking blood regularly.
He claimed he became instantly addicted, saying it was more addicting than heroin. After that first blood ritual, he says he was put in a coffin when he built himself for 3 days.
3 days. There it is again.
Yep, that motif returns. After those 3 days, he claimed he could no longer eat normal food. He subsisted only on blood Catholic communion wafers.
Wait, communion wafers.
Yeah, he claimed they stole them. So that's why Catholic tabernacles often have locks to prevent theft for these kinds of dark rituals. And he also fed through psychic vampirism, using some kind of talisman,
So blood, communion, and psychic energy. That was his diet.
according to him. Initially, he said he drew small amounts of blood from willing volunteers within the cult.
Oh.
Yeah. But he claims the addiction got worse, and he started having desires to do terrible things to get blood. He saw himself as only a half a vampire at this stage.
What does that mean, half?
The full transformation, he believed, required him to actually die and then come back immortal. That final step was something he said he, thankfully, had a problem with, couldn't go through with.
So he was stuck in the state. How did he get out if he's an ex-vampire?
His escape story is quite striking, actually. He'd sent some money, like dues, to the
Yeah.
Church of Satan, but the check got returned. A bank teller had voided it
Just voided it.
and sent it back with a little handwritten note saying she'd be praying for him.
Wow. A random act of kindness.
Exactly. And Schnoebelen says he was so genuinely moved by this unexpected compassion that it prompted him to start reading the Bible again. Seriously this time. Eventually, he became a born-again Christian and claims that's how he escaped the whole thing, the addiction, the alleged vampirism.
That's quite a turnaround. Now, you said his story aligns with other research in some ways.
Yeah, not necessarily the vampirism itself, but his descriptions of, like, satanic hierarchy, the roles of demons, possession some researchers into the occult, find parallels there. And it connects back interestingly to what we discussed earlier about India.
With the blood sacrifices.
Right, the blood sacrificing linked to these entities called Asura in some ancient texts. They're tales that these Asura, these powerful, often malevolent beings, they teach you their forbidden knowledge, their ways. And afterwards, you essentially become their species. You take on their nature.
So this idea of transformation through forbidden pacts, through blood, it echoes across cultures and times.
It really seems to, which leads to the big question, doesn't it? Given these legends are so widespread, I mean, globally, and you have these unsettling historical accounts like PALs and even these modern claims, what does it all tell us about, human fear, our relationship with power, the unknown?
How these incredibly deep-seated beliefs just persist and manifest over millennia. It's a lot to think about. We've covered a huge amount of ground from ancient Indus Valley cults to potential epidemics in Serbia, right up to modern Satanism and these really personal, strange accounts.
We really have skimmed across centuries and continents.
And we didn't even get into some of the really wild tangential stuff, like the supposed bloodline connection between Vlad the Impaler and, believe it or not, the British monarchy.
Haha, yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole for another time, perhaps.
Definitely. But hopefully this gives you, our listener, a much deeper, maybe darker perspective on the vampire phenomenon. And join us next time when we ask a similarly provocative question: are werewolves real?